Hello everyone, and welcome back to another video of history analysis. Today, we'll be analyzing a significant figure in history, Winston Churchill. Sir Winston Leonard Spencer Churchill, what? 13 November 1874 to 24th January 1965, was a British politician, army officer, and writer, says Wikipedia. But come on, you could be reading the article instead of this. That's why I have decided not to read all of it from Wikipedia, because then what's the point of watching? Plus, it's not that much of a trusted source. First, we're going to discuss Churchill's life before politics and how it influenced him. Now, Winston Churchill was born on November 30th, 1874 at Blenheim Palace in Oxfordshire to John and Jenny Spencer Churchill. He came from a family which were among the highest levels of British aristocracy, and thus he was born into the governing elite. So he was off with a good start. In 1876, Winston's father was appointed Viceroy of Ireland, so the family had to move to Dublin, which at the time was part of the United Kingdom. It was here that his brother Jack was born in 1880. Winston Churchill's relationship with his brother was warm. In Dublin, they were cared for primarily by their nanny, Elizabeth Everest. Winston Churchill began boarding at St. George's School in Ascot, Berkshire, at the age of 7. He hated it and did badly academically and constantly misbehaved. As a result, he was moved to Brunswick School in Hove 3 years later. There, his academic performance improved, but his behavior stayed the same. In 1888, he narrowly passed the entrance exam for the elite Harrow School. There, his academic performance stayed high, especially in history, which could have influenced him significantly, but he was unpunctual and careless nonetheless. He wrote poetry and letters which were published in the school magazine and won a fencing competition. His father insisted that he is prepared for a career in the military, and so Winston Churchill's last 3 years in education were spent in the army form. He performed poorly in most of his exams. In March 1893, he took a job at a cram school in Lexham Gardens, South Kensington, and after 2 unsuccessful attempts to enter the Royal Military Academy, he succeeded on his 3rd attempt. There, he was accepted as a cadet in the cavalry, starting his education in September 1893. His education there lasted 15 months, as he graduated in December the next year. In February 1895, Winston Churchill was commissioned as a 2nd lieutenant in the 4th Queen's Own Hussars Regiment of the British Army. He was eager to witness military action and used his mother's influence to try to get himself posted to a war zone. In autumn that year, he and Reginald Barnes traveled to Cuba to observe its War of Independence. They joined Spanish troops attempting to suppress independence fighters and were caught up in several skirmishes. He also spent some time in New York City, staying with the wealthy politician Burke Cochran, who profoundly influenced the young Churchill. Churchill admired the United States, writing to his brother that it was a very great country, and telling his mother what an extraordinary people the Americans are. With the Hussars, Churchill arrived in Bombay, India, in October 1896. They were soon transferred to Bangalore, where he shared a bungalow with Barnes. Churchill remained there for 19 months, during which he made 3 visits to Calcutta, expedition to Hyderabad, and 2 visits back to Britain. Believing himself poorly educated, he began a project of self-education, reading the works of Plato, Adam Smith, Charles Darwin, and Henry Hallam. Most influential for him were Edward Gibbon's The History of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire, Winwood Reade's The Martyrdom of Man, and the writings of Thomas Babington Macaulay. Interested in British parliamentary affairs, in one letter he declared himself a liberal in all but name, but added that he could never endorse the Liberal Party's support for Irish Home Rule. Instead, he allied himself to the Tory Democracy wing of the Conservative Party, and on a visit home gave his first public speech for the Conservatives' Primrose League in Bath. In 1897, he wrote his first book, The Story of the Malakand Field Force, which received largely positive reviews. We're going to stop right there. We just want to know now what influenced him to be able to answer the question in the title. Was Winston Churchill a hero or a villain? Many consider Winston Churchill a hero, emphasizing his heroic acts as Prime Minister during World War II. He was extremely popular at that time and strongly detested the Germans. At the end of May, with the British expeditionary force in retreat to Dunkirk and the fall of France seemingly imminent, Halifax proposed that the government should explore the possibility of a negotiated peace settlement using Mussolini as an intermediary, given that Italy was still neutral then. There were several high-level meetings from 26 to 28 May, including 2 with the French Premier Paul Renaud. Churchill's resolve was to fight on, even if France capitulated, but his position remained precarious until Chamberlain resolved to support him. Churchill had the full support of the 2 Labour members, but knew he could not survive as Prime Minister if both Chamberlain and Halifax were against him. In the end, by gaining the support of his outer cabinet, Churchill outmaneuvered Halifax and won Chamberlain over. The essence of Churchill's argument was that, as he said, and quote, "It was idle to think that if we tried to make peace now, we should get better terms than if we fought it out." He therefore concluded that the only option was to fight on, though, at times, he personally was pessimistic about the chances of a British victory. As on 12 June 1940, when he told General Hastings Ismay that, quote, "You and I will be dead in 3 months' time." Nonetheless, he used his rhetoric hardened public opinion against a peaceful resolution and prepared the British people for a long war. Jenkins says Churchill's speeches were an inspiration for the nation and a catharsis for Churchill himself. Operation Dynamo, the evacuation of 338,226 Allied servicemen from Dunkirk, ended on Tuesday, 4 June, when the French rearguard surrendered. The total was far in excess of expectation, and it gave rise to a popular view that Dunkirk had been a miracle and even a victory. Churchill himself referred to a miracle of deliverance in his "We shall fight on the beaches" speech to the Commons that afternoon, though he shortly reminded everyone that, quote, "We must be careful, very careful, not to assign to this deliverance the attributes of a victory. Wars are not won by evacuations." Churchill's good relations with the United States President Franklin D. Roosevelt helped secure vital food, oil, and ammunitions via the North Atlantic shipping routes. It was for this reason that Churchill was relieved when Roosevelt was re-elected in 1940. Upon re-election, Roosevelt set about implementing a new method of providing necessities to Great Britain without the need for monetary payment. He persuaded Congress that repayment for this immensely costly service would take the form of defending the US. The policy was known as Lend-Lease, and it was formally enacted on 11 March 1941. In August 1941, Churchill made his first transatlantic crossing of the war on board HMS Prince of Wales and met Roosevelt in Placentia Bay, Newfoundland. On 14 August, they issued the joint statement that has become known as the Atlantic Charter. This outlined the goals of both countries for the future of the world, as it is seen as the inspiration for the 1942 Declaration by the United States, itself the basis of the United Nations, which was founded in June 1945. Some, however, consider Winston Churchill a villain. He seems to have been very racist, and he had very strong views about the British relationship with India and was opposed to self-rule. He also considered Gandhi a threat to the British Empire. He is accused of not doing enough work to prevent during a famine in the region of Bengal in Southeast Asia, in which millions of people are thought to have died. This happened in 1943, during World War II, and some experts say his focus was on fighting the war in Europe, and that when he became aware of the true seriousness of what was happening, he ordered grain to be sent there. He also has a negative reputation for the way he dealt with the unions and workers' rights, mainly after sending the army in to stop riots following strikes in Tonypandy in South Wales. Churchill believed that Kenya's fertile highlands should be the preserve of the white settlers, and approved the clearing out of the local blackamoors. He saw the local Kikuyu as, quote, brutish children. When they rebelled under Churchill's post-war premiership, some 150,000 of them were forced at gunpoint into detention camps, later dubbed Britain's Gulag by Pulitzer Prize-winning historian Professor Caroline Elkins. In conclusion, I think, in my opinion, that Winston Churchill was both good and bad, and I believe he was a hero who had made lots of bad decisions and had lots of bad views, and which have made many people to hate him. Although Winston Churchill is known to many as a hero, most don't know about the mistakes he has done during his life, which has caused misery, to say the least, to lots of people.